hit the one we're live. Remember this? Remember this?
It's an exciting day.
Look,
I was
she's
excited.
back.
I know, Julie's back.
I mean, you say
That's
it like
why-
it's just happened. I have been back for 2 months.
Well,
know,
you
but
say
we've-
that, but every time we look up, we're back.
It's a joy.
I know, and
I bring joy to your life.
we've our whelms have
Been
run
over.
Yeah.
and our gas have been flabbered, and
Yeah.
we've only just managed to get ourselves together.
I know.
To
I mean, I know you've been back 2 months, but it's only felt like 2 days
2 years.
because you were away. And Chris and I started selling cakes and stuff. And I know that wasn't core for the business, but we felt it was maybe something worth trying because we missed your guidance.
So that's what it is. It's
Missed your
understand.
guidance.
Welcome back, Jules.
Welcome
Thanks.
back.
We've not done this for a while.
I know. We've been busy
I know.
with other stuff,
I know.
but we're here. You know what? Well, let's just dive into it. No jokes.
No
I
joke.
don't have a
Have you
joke.
got a joke?
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
disappointing. The standards have slipped.
I know. See, Jules back.
And we've moved on. We're more mature than that.
Do you think that's what it is?
Does the music? When does the music happen?
I don't know what this is, but we normally call this the good podcast. Then we come in and we have a chat, the good brand podcast even, and we have a little chat. We talk about brand, we talk about stuff. We welcome Julie back, and then we just don't have many jokes because we've really been thinking about this topic. You join us, dear listener, after having what could only be described as a 20-minute productive chat about an article that Chris has been going on a storm, Julie.
He has been going. There was a plethora of articles to choose from when we were talking about the topic today. Talking about the topic.
Well, we're going back to an old favourite.
What shall we get Chris riled up and ranting about today?
No, not riled up. More observational, and it's that old friend, brand architecture. You know.
Our old buddy.
It never goes away. It's like a stone in my shoe. The thing is, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've had a few inquiries in this area. So I describe them as more specialist than usual. So they're people that are recognizing the issue as a specific brand architecture.
Can I ask a question? Do they come in and say we've got a brand architecture problem, or do they describe it in long form and it turns into a brand architecture problem?
A little bit of both,
Right.
but they're using the term. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because I've noticed a few times recently that people have identified architecture and used the term brand architecture
That's
as
nice.
a problem, which
And they're recognizing there's a gap in the knowledge around how to
Because
fix
that's
it.
nice. Because normally it's the kind of thing where you kind of worry that it's in our little agency echo chamber going, as a brand architect. Oh, that's good. Well, that's
Well,
good.
yeah, and so
That's
that
good.
that's what prompted me to write the article, because it was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Is there now an evolution of the knowledge and the difference between the theory and the practice and all that stuff? Because the one thing we do know is there's loads of theory out there.
Oh,
a lot of it's rubbish. But
I
but
think
there's loads
it's
of
what
it.
we've seen a lot in the past, I would say, is people who have, or potential clients who have reached out to say, we have, we need to develop our brand, or we need to evolve our brand because we have, we want to launch this and, it's confusing, blah, blah, blah. And so further down the track, or not very much further down the track, but you go, this is actually an architecture problem because there's a number of things at play here. Whereas the outreaches that you're referring to are much more focused on their services that they're looking for, which is around architecture.
Yeah. So I wrote this piece around called The Practical Side of Brand Architecture, What Theory Doesn't Tell You. It just explores kind of the theory part and the practice part and where we fit in that. But I think that the most important part is to define what we mean by brand architecture, right? That's where I wanted to start. Because what are definitions, Stuart?
They're the most important thing, because this is the problem with this bloody industry.
Correct. So the definitions are well placed. So I've written this thing that says, for us, brand architecture is the process of defining the structural relationships and naming conventions between brands, products, and services.
Brilliant.
Right?
Beautiful. Very
specific.
clear.
Very cool.
But it's really important that I think is nailed down because, as we just said, there are so many different definitions out there. Much of it nonsense, and I've written quite a lot on it. We've all written stuff in the past, and if you Google it, you get lots of kind of
Variations on the
diagrams.
theme.
Yeah, diagrams, and also it doesn't help because broadly there are no absolutes here. There are no absolute rights or wrongs, which can be challenging. So a lot of that theory, though, I think is it very quickly gets to a consensus around, it's about logos and how whether they're endorsed or whether they're not or whatever it is, and I think it skates over some of the deeper seated challenges, I would say.
Just to be clarified, you think sometimes it's a big one, like what order does the logo go in with the name? Does it start off?
Yeah, it can be naive. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a kind of naive understanding that that's all it is.
So sometimes it's more about organisation of pieces in an order.
And if you tidy it up in the Brown guidelines, then it's done.
Right.
But and it doesn't ask deeper questions or behavioural change questions within an organisation, which I think is where the real meat is. And I think we've often found that they often present as Jules has just highlighted, that part of a comms challenge, or it's a brand evolution project. Yeah. And I think that falls short of the real challenge. But I get it. It's also important to say that I understand why that happens, because these things, as we've talked about before, the problem with this stuff is it presents and develops the problems really slow. And it doesn't actually cause immediate challenge to the business. You can limp, as we've seen, businesses they can limp along with multiple brands overlapping and doing the same thing for years without recognizing or without dealing with it. I kind of understand why you end up in a place where you're treating the symptoms and not the source, not the cause, and they end up being treated as sort of design projects rather than dealing with a real business challenge that has an impact. Make sense?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is, as we just said at the top of this piece, is that some clients or potential clients are beginning, I think, are seeing that and identifying that, which I think it shows progress.
I think the interesting thing about your piece is actually, so while people can kind of go, right, we need a brand architecture thing, I think they underestimate, which is the nature of your piece, about the challenges that go into it. And I think one of the practical, out with your definition, which is spot on, what is surprising when you get into it, if you've not done it before, is actually how names which would seem to be quite formulaic because you've been working with them suddenly have such an emotional bond to the people that have actually worked with them. Like, oh no, we can't get rid of Peanut Head. Peanut Head's been around for 20 years.
Customers love it.
Our customers love it. And I think suddenly something that seems quite functional on a day-to-day level, it suddenly becomes emotional. And I think the clients that work now sometimes get a little bit surprised at that coming up. Yeah, at the emotion of it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Which I think is why, and not to jump ahead, but I think we've seen a number of clients or talked to a number of clients over the years who have come to us eventually, but haven't, on the back of having tried to sort it out themselves. And I think this in particular, I think, is really challenging. You don't have the benefit of being in an objective position to say the whole inside out bias thing again. You see it again here.
These brand architecture challenges are strategic plays, right? Yep. So they're not things that are fixed in a week and you're back, or 2 weeks. They're long term, over years that bear fruit. And that means that it's about making a series of choices or decisions or sacrifices, we've used that term before, right, that play into a wider strategy for a value-driven goal.
That's absolutely, I think the things you come up against, though, is when you're going in that strategy, it can feel as if it's quite cold. And what we don't do is we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's actually customer first. And, you know, and we've worked with companies that have acquired a lot of businesses, and so there's a lot of names there. Mm-hmm. And so our approach is, you're in the B2B space, you have to be descriptive because nobody knows what a peanut head is. What is a peanut head? You've got to then waste time going into that.
I mean, it's quite blunt, but we say there's going to be pain somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about the practicality of it. This is not as easy as you think it's going to be.
This is going to be painful. Yeah. And we recognize these choices are difficult, like killing off brands or merging them. They're difficult challenges, but they do realize value in the long term. So,
and sometimes it's not necessarily the killing, because I think we've also worked with clients where it's not been about killing something that exists following acquisition. It's stopping the creation of new unnecessarily.
Yes, good point. Yeah.
Which it raises the same questions and ultimately leads to the same complexities, but it's
the curse of the project name. you
Well,
know,
there's that as well,
the
yeah.
project name comes up, and then the project name sticks,
Stays.
and then suddenly it becomes the
ZX34 too.
yeah, or the Albatross.
Yeah.
Project
Albatross, yeah.
Project Albatross, and then it'll come up and go, yeah, we're going to call this the Albatross. I don't think so.
So, you know, in our time and our experience of doing this, we've recognized the fact that the business has got to have a little bit of a come to Jesus moment as well. And it has to understand there is going to be pain, and someone has to want to lead that, someone senior. Because this isn't done from
Bottom up.
the bottom up. This tends to be most successfully done from the top and the middle down.
Well, I think it has to be, because again, just to your point at the start of the article around the theoretical bit of this, the lack of absolutes in terms of right and wrong means that as soon as you can, if you don't have a clear directive or direction, or you know, from the top and buy-in at the very top, and you know, somebody that's ultimately making the unpopular decisions for the benefit of the business, then gaining sort of consensus and alignment is nigh on impossible, because everyone has a different perspective and a different objective and a different viewpoint. So
we've been in positions, haven't we, where you're in a scenario with a client and suddenly someone turns and says, Chris is going to explain why we need to do this. And you're like, well, I can outline that, but you fundamentally have to believe it's worth doing. I'm not here to convince you to spend money in the brand space if you just want to redesign the logos, because the reality is it is hard enough as it is. And Stuart, you wrote something recently that really stuck with me, which is about, you know, the we's and the me's. So even with a business that is agreed that they need to make a change, there's a challenge with
it's from the challenge. There's the challenger customer thing, where basically if you're going into an organization, we will all know that there's a problem. So we will go, you know, we will say, yes, our brand architecture is a bit of a mess, we need to sort out.
So there's an acknowledgement, a consensus.
Yes. The challenge is with the me's is that it then becomes a personal thing about what you need to change. And so that will be people go, well, listen, I've worked with this, like sales team, for example, go, well, like, we can't get rid of the 38924 because we've been selling the 38924 for 40 years. And I know how to sell it. And if I change the name, that's a thing. And suddenly, and then other people will go from a marketing department, go, we've just got too many things. The brochure's now 70 pages. You can't use the website. It just costs a lot of money to maintain all this thing and this categories and all these things. And suddenly from the we, which is we need to change this for reasons, the me's then start to, there's no consensus about what that is. Because
it's untangling that and then building a sort of galvanizing a consensus around what's best for the business. Yeah. And you mentioned objectivity, Jules. I think that's really important because it does. It's just a matter of fact that it takes time and years of working through challenges like this with organizations and explaining to them that it's, you know, it's understandable that there is emotional charge. It is difficult and it's worrying. Yeah. But equally, offering them the reassurance that we've done this before and this is, you do this and that's likely to happen.
And I think when you listen to sales teams, like, that's where a lot of my focus is, I think if you can make it easier to sell, then they'll buy in. And that's the point. The point isn't to make it more, the point is not to make it's simplifying it to the point where it's easy to understand. If it's easy to understand, it's easy then to explain. If it's easier to explain, then people will buy it. Mm-hmm. If you go in with going, well, listen, here's the Bajingo category, and underneath we've got 40 products. Which one do you want? It's like, well, that's not what you want. You want to try and simplify that so it's easy to understand, so that the people that you're selling to can take the information they've been given and share that around the organization. Yeah.
So, you know, I do think that we reach for that kind of deeper, more strategic opportunity. Because I think ultimately it's a more rewarding process. And again, Stuart, you've written or talked about the fact that it can be transformative.
Yeah, I was going to say it's some more valuable output for the client ultimately.
And you are taking people to a place to view their business or their portfolios from a completely different perspective, right? And that can be quite rewarding. You're doing something at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I think it's when you start putting in new conventions for names, because you've got to have a convention, and then you see an old brand name up there, and then the client goes, I don't like that. As opposed to the challenge at the beginning was maybe to get it to change. And then there's a discussion about how do we describe that? What is the descriptive name for that product? And then suddenly you've got two products in there because of the way it's bundled up and everything else, and then you can separate it out and make it clearer. And suddenly you've kind of got, rather than one name that doesn't mean anything like Peanut Head, you've got kind of one thing that says Peanut, the other says I'll come back to me later. But I think what you've got is something that makes sense to the customer and is easy therefore to sell, because you go, you want that solution or that solution. It all goes under the one piece of software, but it makes it easier to sell.
Yeah. So I think, and I concluded the piece by saying that what I find rewarding around that is that, and us helping to bridge that gap between the theory and the practice. It's kind of the driving force that's behind our vision around making brands and branding better understood, respected, and valued. So, we enjoy leaning into those challenges and helping to close that gap, because ultimately it's rewarding for us too, right?
Well, it is, because ultimately, what the example that you're talking about there, Stuart, when there are at various points in the process, there are a lot of balls in the air and lots of things happening alongside one another. And I think sometimes, from a client perspective, you don't necessarily, you don't know what the output is going to be at the start of the process. And it can feel quite messy sometimes along the way when you then get further through towards the end of the process and the client saying, I get this now feels like a really valuable process, and I get why we're doing what we've,
Because do you think that's because they're so close to it that they couldn't?
Well, I think it's just
see it at the beginning, or did we not?
No, I think it can be about. I think sometimes what it is you're asking questions of them that they've not really considered, and there's, as Julie says, there are a couple of balls up in the air. Like there might be this, that, and the next thing. It's interesting that the moment of clarity, even though we've described it, and even though we were thoroughly trusted, and we said we're doing this to get to this, is when we actually started putting it in a sales presenter. Something that they use every day, and suddenly it crystallizes and goes, okay,
penny drops.
Yeah, this is it.
That's when you're addressing the comms challenge. Do you know what I mean? At almost at the end of the process, because that's where it then comes down to when the rubber meets the road, and you're going out to talk to customers about this. How are we presenting this portfolio of products, or the brand and all the associated parts of it? That when that makes sense, and there's clarity and definition for marketing teams, comms teams, sales teams, product teams, then the client can see the real value for the business. And that's where it's that, back to your original point. That's why it's rewarding for us, because you see the value of the work, but so does, the ultimate, it's transformative and really impactful for the client's business, which is why we're doing it in the first place.
Yes.
Obviously.
I love that. And that's the value of the experience. It's starting at the end and working back rather than starting with what you think the problem is and working forward.
And I think that's the thing with these projects, you've identified the issue, client has identified the issue, or we have been part of the process. Broadly what you want the destination to be, but the journey between is not linear, and it is messy. And I think, but again, it speaks volumes to the trust that's put in us as a partner with the client in that. And if that wasn't there and the relationship wasn't solid, then it probably would fracture and break down halfway through.
I think those in the process they saw. There was enough reassurance that parents could, we haven't thought of it like this before. Yeah. Okay, this is it. And then suddenly you do see something that can help a wide range of stakeholders, and it will work in the website, it will work there. It's the same message.
Maybe we need to reflect and think more about how we talk about that then in the intro phase.
And I think, I think we showcased it. You do. I just think it's very difficult when you're so used to doing it. We're given product names. Yeah. And then you're kind of taking a step back and going, right, well, what we're doing is we're changing all of that. Yeah. And here's the reasons why. And you're going against sometimes the kind of thing, well, why are you doing this? Because, everybody loves the PL3927. And
which we know is not true.
Yeah. And the other thing about the practicality is this, and we've talked a lot about internal teams, is actually talking to customers. Because that's because that is the thing. If they do love a PL73892, then I think you've kind of got to go, right, well are we changing this for the kid? I think it's not ploughing ahead because of theory.
Absolutely.
It's got to, that theory has got to hit the road. And if you're starting to alienate customers now, I think the way that when we talk to customers, they kind of go, his are changing, and then it becomes a communication model about how are you going to communicate this so that there is, you're not there. So if it's not insurmountable.
You're right.
But I think that's a key part of it as well.
Yeah, let's understand exactly what the...
If only to then to say the sales guy goes like, they don't know a PL 232 from a PL 389. They don't. That is what you live. That's not what they live.
Correct. Yeah, which is what we generally find.
Yeah.
Okay, that was quick, and I feel quite good about that.
Oh, I'm delighted. That's
well,
good.
if you feel good, we all
then
feel
it's
good.
it's a job well done. Job well done. Listen, there's going to be more of these. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, there's so many tangents and like offshoot conversations you can have, always linked to that core thing. So yeah, I think that is a nice little.
And I promise, I've got a really good joke. I can't mind it. Can't remember it at all. It's
Cool
in my
story,
head.
bro.
I know.
It must
I
have
can
been.
tell you about the time I was called Slasher. I was telling you about it earlier on. Well, Slasher, there we go.
We'll save that for the
Save
next
that
one.
for the next
All
pod.
There's a cliffhanger. Right.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.